Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Guess what day it is? Oh, it's Tuesday. It's January 11th. It's 2011. That's right, 1/11/11. And this is day 9 daily number 238. I have a fever, so it is what we call a red blanket day, which is another way of saying I just am going to feel so sorry for myself this whole cast. I got my blanket. I got Manfred. It's going to keep me company, so that way we can still do the daily. And I can still make sure I don't die from illness. Yeah, it's the thumbs up of approval. We have some cool announcements coming up. Obviously, next week is going to be Newbie Tuesday. And what I would like you guys to do is just briefly rewatch Day 9 Daily number 235, I believe it was, where I just outlined a very simple Zerg vs. Zerg opening. The essential opening is that you get 2 geysers relatively quickly and tech to a layer while getting some roaches. And that the idea is the layer tech is your playground. Either speed roaches, roaches with burrow, spire, overseers, these sorts of things. I want you to watch that, try it out, and then submit to me replays of you struggling with it or even doing a good job with it to Tuesday at day9.tv. Now, rather than have you watch me blow my nose, watch this. I have my overlay. All right. Perfect. Very good. Oh, man. Manfred got the brunt of that assault. Fantastic. So, yeah, definitely submit those to Tuesday at day9.tv. In other exciting news, we're going to be announcing this week's HyperX community submissions for basically you to make fun of me or to just do fan art of me in order to win fancy HyperX products. That's right, for any of you who don't know what we're talking about, if you go to facebook.com/HyperX community, bam! This is the competition that you would be entering. You go to the HyperX community page, which as you see is facebook.com/HyperX community, and you can win a chance to hang out with me and Day 9, me and In Control. All you have to do is go there, like their page, and then participate in submitting fan art. So for instance, last week's was fan art of me. Next week's is fan art of Idra and In Control. Just post it to their page, and finalists will be selected. So for instance, we can look at the finalists right now. If we actually just go to this poll section. Yeah, so here are the finalists right now. You vote. It's all about community voting. Please vote for what you think the winner is. So, for instance, we have some Minecraft art of Day 9. Yay! We got me looking extraordinarily suave and space-like. I have all the icons floating above my head. I'm doing my troll face, Obama style. We even have some fancy art of me sort of beautifully caressing a Hydralisk in a pseudo-sexual fashion, very much so in the 4th Aliens movie. There's some amazing fan art up on YouTube that you should check out. People drawn. Yeah. And in this one in particular has many inside jokes. There's even a Starcraft2
Do you want to feel bro? Try Protoss, the alien race for Starcraft2 players that want gratuitous amounts of energy.
Yes, that's right. There's a little bit of that. What else do we have up here? Scroll down. Yeah, we have me, and that I actually think is the most accurate depiction of me that I've ever seen. I actually am that muscular. I don't have a lower body because I'm a Muppet, but this upper torso looks a lot like what I do, and we got some trumpets in there. These are various thought hammers. We even have a pretty accurate drawing of me. Oh, definitely go check those out and vote. Again, facebook.com/HyperX community. I really want you to vote. And of course, like them, or else I don't think you can actually vote. In other exciting news, today I was originally going to be doing a Terran vs. Protoss. I was originally going to be doing QXC vs. Sake. However, I realized that I haven't done a Terran vs. Terran in a while. So, what we're going to end up doing today is just to check out a TvT that has never been seen before by me. Unfortunately, all of everything is sort of pre-patch. So that means that I cannot really end up loading a lot of replays in the midst. So we had to load up this one in particular, and we're actually just going to briefly investigate one last little thing. My computer is reporting that everything is going to crash, so I just want to make sure that nothing is going to crash. Very good. Thank you very much, computer. It wouldn't have surprised me if everything just sort of went thermonuclear, but fortunately, I am quite the counter-terrorist. I'm able to deflect such issues. So, as usual, I'm starting to just not worry about checking the sound. I sort of just start the Day 9 daily, and then as a ritual, Control S, no problem. This lets you know that things are normal in the world. One of these days, sound's going to come on, and you're going to be like, is Day 9 okay? But no, you hear me have a fever, you hear I have a sore throat, and my sound's disabled? Alright, well, I'm sure he's doing okay. So, of course, we have a Terran vs. Terran between this Korean guy, who we will call Red. And in the bottom right, we have that Korean guy, whom we shall call Blue. Now, what I'm about to tell you is kind of similar to how I do commentary and analysis. Basically, every time I start a game, I have a few key questions I ask myself. Let's see how many there are. I'm going to say three big considerations. The first one is, what do players normally do, right? What is the normal mix or mixes that I see? So, for instance, with Zerg, I'll always do this by matchup, right? So, for instance, in a Zerg vs. Terran, what are some usual mixes I see? Mutalisk, Baneling, Zergling. That's a pretty normal mix. What's another pretty normal mix? Hydralisks and Roaches, right? This is just sort of how I state it. These usual little mixes. Or for Terran, something like Marine Marauder Medevac. Or Marine Tank Medevac. Or something like Mech. Thors and Tanks and Hellions. Each of these mixes is pretty simple. I'm not even thinking about the structures. Just thinking about what is the usual thing that they do that I normally see as a standard. And then the second big question I ask myself is, since this is the map, how does that influence things? And again, nothing too extreme. Just something like, oh, Lost Temple, your natural's kind of easy to defend. Oh, Xel'Naga Caverns, your natural is not that easy to defend. Oh, Delta Quadrant, you have a back door and a front door expansion. These sorts of things. And the last one is, are there any stylistic tendencies of the players? And honestly, I tend to just throw that out the window. It's kind of fun to say things like, oh yeah, this player always mechs. Why really obsess about that? Because honestly, the first two cover most of everything. However, whenever I'm commenting a tournament, such as after today's daily, I'm going to be doing the semifinals of the Root Gaming tournament, the Root Gaming Warzone. That'll be Sen vs. Torrent right after this. Yeah, like for instance for that, I love bringing up my facts, but for my analysis, don't even need it. Don't get too obsessed with the players and what the players do. Let's just think more about what the races will normally do. So on this map, in this matchup, okay, well, normally we see some sort of mix of tanks and infantry. Now, I know people can open up with Banshees. I'm not talking about the opening. Sure, he could open up with, like, Barracks Factory, ultra-fast starport. I'm talking about the mix that they eventually go for. The mix that they eventually go for. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a sec. Again, the mix that they eventually go for. We're going to repeat that several times, the mix that they eventually go for. And now we're going to talk a little bit about the map. Yeah, we could take this kind of easily. We could set some tanks up here. In particular, we can take this quite easily. And you know what? All expansions are a little bit close, right? We can just sort of walk in either direction. So now I'm on to my second question. Oh, I really think that on this map, tanks are going to be very, very useful because we can easily cover a lot of expansions in a small amount of area. Tanks like that. Very much the reason why tanks are popular on Lost Temple. You place a whole bunch of tanks on those Xel'Naga watchtowers, and suddenly you have conquered the whole map. Right? That is exactly the reasoning. Right? And again, not complicated. Not complicated at all. Xel'Naga Caverns, really widespread out, maybe might not see so many tanks, might see more Marines and Marauders. So you're starting to see that these two simple contexts, what mix do they go for, and what does the map influence on that, can start to really just churn out insight without you having to do that much effort. Cool. So, I can, even in my commentary, like if I'm commenting on a tournament, or if I'm doing like a straight-up analysis like now, you'll hear me say things like, ooh, yeah, I don't know if I like this build because it makes it harder to do X. All those comments are founded on those two basic questions. What are the usual mixes, and how does the map influence that? On this map, alright, we've already said something like tanks are going to be really good. if he is going for like 4 barracks really early on and an expand, I'm going to say something like, alright, cool, he's doing a marine early expand, but that kind of worries me because it's going to be a little bit hard to get tanks with no factory, right? Ooh, I'm not so sure how much I like this because it's harder to get that usual mix. If he goes something for like fast Banshee, I'll say, alright, cool, this is a great opening, not just because of the Banshee, but because also it gets that factory out of the way so we can begin making tanks pretty early on. Nice. Kill him, Blue. So that's actually one of the main reasons why I chose 2 anonymous Terran players in this game. We're not going to get bogged down by their identities or something like that. Like if this were Phoenix, I would tell you, oh, there's going to be a lot of drops, a lot of harassment, a lot of aggression, and 2 factory tank pretty quickly. That's pretty typical from our the player Phoenix. But now, I don't have to know any of that. I don't have to know, oh, it's TLO, is he going to be doing something creative? Because then your brain will betray you, and you'll be thinking, ooh, is he going to be going for, I don't know, maybe a mass Hellion all game long? Oh, and you just stop thinking about what's good. So, of course, he's doing rectangle, rectangle, sweat. Is that? We see both players just making usual mixes of Marines already. You would hear me say something like, alright, pretty typical opening. I like it on this map because you know what? It helps you get those tanks up pretty early, no matter what you go for at this point in time. I think that's pretty strong. Okay, a Banshee opening. Alright, looks like both of them are going for Banshees. Or they could be going for something a little bit more normal, like tanks and Vikings. Nothing wrong with that build either. Now, little things like the fact that Banshees can hit this back area, like, it's really good to just run a Banshee here, and then up, and then back again. This is really annoying, especially for you Protoss players. That is what I always refer to as a tactic. I tend not to obsess too much about tactics when looking at a map. Excuse me. I prefer to do something like focus on overall strategy. So that generally relates back to expansions and where the map is wide and spread out and where it's tight and packed together. So again, not that concerned about the Banshee stuff. It's one of those obvious things that I think most people will pick up, but today we're not going to focus on everything obvious. We're going to focus on cool, subtle elements. Yeah, so it looks like, no tanks coming out of you. Hey, tanks coming out of you. Alright, cool. So now we're starting to get to our usual mixes. We see some Marines. Looks like he is just waiting to lift the factory until the last second. And now he is. And we do seem to have a Banshee coming. There are more Marines coming out. For the record, you can get the Tech Lab add-on and build a Hellion and still be able to churn out that Banshee in time. So, okay, cool. Now, I'm going to keep talking about this mix thing for a moment. Now, let's just state for the record, let's say we've seen this replay, or let's say we know Blue, and Blue has told us 100%, I am gonna be going for tanks in this game. Or, another way to state that is, suppose we think the way Day9 thinks, right? I always say, well, what's the usual mix? Tanks, some infantry, probably some Vikings, but tanks are going to be that big unit that I'm thinking about on this map. So now that we've answered that question, I want you to think, how does this opening help us get tanks? How does this opening help us get tanks? How does this opening help us get tanks? Well, we already have a factory out. Okay, so this means that we can already begin building tanks. But what about the Banshee with Cloak? What does that help us do? This is where, again, just by stating what do I eventually want to get in terms of these unit mixes, again, a lot of tanks seems good on this map because I did a brief analysis before the game started. Well, how does this Banshee help? You know what? This Banshee can keep my opponent pinned back in his base. He'll probably need to wait till he has a Raven, or he's going to need a waste scan. I can do a little bit of damage to him. And while all that's going on, I can get an expansion up kind of quickly and get my economy rolling. And then, with my expansion up, and I already have some position, that is, I already am able to move my units out. There's no way he can contain me because he has to play defensively. I have a Cloaked Banshee. Now I can start making tanks and position them well, right? If there's a Cloaked Banshee that pops out and moves up into this area, Terran's going to need to keep all his units in this green box because he's worried about this Banshee that's harassing right here. This means I can freely march my tanks here. Or, in other cases, the fact that I have this Banshee out means that he needs to make Banshee defense, which means he is making less tanks, which means I am winning the tank battle, right? Because I'm already getting to build more. You're starting to see how this is all just sort of pouring out just from this idea of these unit mixes. Alright, cool. And obviously this is a very direct way to deal with this goal of getting a lot of tanks on this map. Oh, nifty. We build a factory, we get a tech lab add-on, we just start making tanks. Bum-ba-da! And this always makes me frown when someone gets way too much production than they can afford. Like, yeah, here's 2 Vikings coming out, but he can't build a tank. I'm so sad. Alright, cool. So, hey, look, he's starting to make tanks himself. Looks like, oh my goodness, it looks like he just completely canceled that. Wow, that's actually kind of bold. That's actually kind of nuts. Ooh, wow. For the record, 1 Cloak Banshee, like, kills all that, but he canceled it. I actually do not like that decision. Basically, right now, Blue's doing a really... Oh, wait, did he also lose that 1 command center? That's terrible. I'm gonna look at Blue's money for the moment. Also, game sounds appear to be a little loud. Oh, indeed they are. Whoops. Hey, cool. Thanks, gamer, for letting me know. Wouldn't be a Day 9 daily without the classic errors. It's okay. I got a bug, as did my computer. So, I'm actually blown away at the idea that this Terran did not actually end up canceling. Alright, it looks like... Ooh, yeah, that's terrible. So Blue's making a lot of very bad decisions, right? I would call that last second cancel kind of weird. Because you know what? The Banshee, even if he has some detection, even if he has all sorts of Ravens out, I mean, it's still a useful unit to just do a little poking and sort of pull all his units back. Because remember, I didn't say a Cloaked Banshee's good because, damn it, he can't see you. I said it's good because it's going to force our opponent to make a whole bunch of detecting things, all of which cost gas, all of which allow us to dump our money into tanks, and him to not dump money into tanks. So right now we're going to see both these players do their usual sort of thing. I'm going to be fast-forwarding later on in this because I wanted to just focus on this early stage and just note how this is really going to help us think about whatever opening and how it pours into this idea of our overarching unit mix. So now we're starting to see things like, alright, cool, I have another tech lab because I went for the Banshees. I can begin getting a double factory. Probably going to be wanting to invest in infantry a little more. Tanks can't really go out on their own. They need things to support them. So if we get a lot of Marines, we can begin marching forward with our tanks. A lot of nice, tight, closed-off locations. Terran's starting to get close. Blue's starting to get close to red. Blue is starting to make mistakes right outside Reds. The Automaton 2000 does manage to survive that blast. We're going to look back here for a moment. Okay, cool. Now, this is a phase in the game where you would say to yourself, alright, I know I kind of want a lot of tanks. And by kind of a lot of tanks, something like 2 factories making tanks. Notice how I took the idea of, hey, tanks seem pretty good on this map, and translated it into something concrete. 2 factories making tanks. Wasn't a huge leap, but it was a leap. So make it, right? If you see a map and you're like, oh, Void Rays are going to be really good on this map, say to yourself, 1 Stargate Void Rays? Or should I get a very delayed 2 Stargate Void Rays? Just make a declaration. And if you do it and it turns out horrible, you can always go, cool, I didn't do it correctly. So let's go back to the game briefly. Alright, great. So what we did was, again, we made that concrete. 2 factories making tanks. So we're still having that as our goal in mind. At this stage in the game, if we want to eventually have 2 factories making tanks, we start to say, how quickly do I want that second factory? Again, a lot of stuff is dumping out of this idea of this is the usual mix I want. Okay, let me make it a little bit concrete. Now, what are all the problems I encounter? Holy cow. Can I just make a lot of tanks and like survive? Can I make a lot of tanks and continue to expand? If I make a lot of tanks, does he contain me? What I would probably say is, yeah, you know what? You might want to invest in some barracks first. Yeah, look at this. Reactors. Yeah, 3 barracks. About 3 barracks and then 2 factories afterwards. seems good because I want to have a whole bunch of Marines and Marauders to help me sort of chew out little bits of space for myself. You saw how easily Blue was able to march across the map because he had more Marines and Marauders. And hey, look at this. It looks like our Blue player, right, yeah, look at this, getting a factory. We're starting to see how things are linking together in a reasonable fashion. The fact also that he canceled that Banshee and Cloak means he has a ton more gas that he can use to get these tanks. Now we see some more barracks finishing up right now. Going to be focusing on the differences between these two players for the meantime. And again, how do each of them sort of account for what their eventual goals are. It looks like we have some Vikings out for red and none out for blue. We do have this blue starport done. Actually, just double checking, we see, yep, no Vikings whatsoever. Oh, I have a sneeze that's going to be coming on eventually. Especially if I start saying things with the letter N. Tanks. It's tickling my nose. A sneeze may be coming eventually. Hope I don't just spray the screen, or at the very least Manfred. Okay, now why would someone be favoring so many reactor barracks instead of more tech lab barracks? Why would someone be doing that on this map? Alright, even for you Zerg and Protoss players, I want to give you the following information for the billionth time this cast. Tanks are pretty good on this map. Okay? Tanks are pretty good on this map, and the usual mix that players are going to be going for is some infantry and some tanks. But again, on this map, a little bit skewed towards the tanks. So why would he be making so many reactor barracks? Well, gee, that's going to save him gas so that he can make more tanks. If he tries to get too many Marauders and upgrades, that eats into his gas count. Ta-da! You now have insight into the matchup, having never played it before. Watcha! The flam. Hey, look, a second factory coming out. So this is where we start to highlight differences between these players. Big differences in their styles of play. Again, both of them, yeah, look, here's two tech labs to get the double upgrades. Excuse me. Again, the eventual unit mix is a lot of tanks and some supporting Marine Marauder. A lot of tanks supporting Marine Marauder. Eventually, I bet you both players are going to have almost the identical mix of structures. Both of them are going to have, like, you know, X factories and Y barracks each, right? They're going to have the exact same. So what exactly is going on in this game? What is really now the difference between them? Is it that one's better or one's worse? Generally not. Generally, it's kind of hard to do something really wrong with a lot of openings as long as you understand your opening's strengths and its weaknesses. So, if you're making a lot of Marines and Marauders first, you are more mobile. And as we see, red is going to be a lot more comfortable moving out to these center areas of the map. Blue is not as mobile. The tanks are his power unit. He needs to make certain that those are sieged. So he needs to get them in a good position. Look at him. Unsieging, moving forward, what, 2 inches? And now sieging up again. That's fine, though. He knows that it's hard for himself to get broken. He can easily take this or this. Easily take those. Just going to have to be a little bit immobile for a while. Red, on the other hand, can take almost any expansion he wants because he is a little bit more mobile. Right? He can move all the way up here. This expansion's safe, this expansion's safe, and you know what? This one's pretty damn safe too with this nice stranglehold here, as is this one. Alright. So now, with all these differences, alright, again, they're going to be going for the same unit mix. I'm noticing a lot of barracks. I'm noticing these 2 factories. I'm back here. I'm noticing a good amount of barracks, a good amount of factories. Alright, cool. How do we do more stylistic differences? Well, as red, we could say, I'm not going to be really making that many units, that many infantry. I'm making a lot of tanks, and I'm going to be getting a lot of medevacs. I'm going to use my early infantry play to get myself in good position, and then I'm going to harass them a ton, and I'm going to use my long tank lines to give me that advantage. Or we could do it in this way, where we say, you know what, I'm going to get fewer tanks, but I'm going to have more Vikings, which means I can still be more aggressive with my tankies. Pretty cool. They're basically ending up in the same spot, but by the order that they went in, they have what I would call imbalances, not in terms of like, oh, that's imbalanced, that's unfair, but like one player is strong and immobile, one player is weaker and more mobile. There's differences, there's an imbalance there, and both of them are exploiting them in reasonable ways. All you gotta do is think about how your situations are different. Alright, cool. I think a big mistake that a lot of players will do is they'll be going tank Viking, and they'll think to themselves, okay, cool, I'm going to be very, very passive. And if they're against a sufficiently shitty player, it feels okay. Because the shitty player always tries to run up and win these tank fights, but me, with my superior Viking count, I always win, wahaha. You kind of actually do need to do this sort of thing. Because if your opponent is smart, and if you're playing defensively with this unit mix, again, look, 7 tanks, more than 7 tanks. If you're playing defensively with this unit mix, for instance, if you're having all your stuff here, this immobile player suddenly says, can I really walk to here and wall you in? Cool, I guess I will. So blue will exploit the fact that you are sacrificing your mobility. Again, red is the mobile player. Right? Red needs to do things that involve mobility. He doesn't need a misstep like this. This is actually exactly what blue really wants. But I'm happier with a player who loses everything in the way that red did there, by misclicking and not being focused enough. I prefer that to a player who makes a lot of tanks and Vikings and then plays really passively. Now, if you play passively with a bunch of tanks and you're going Marine Medevac, that makes a lot of sense. You need to play defensively and then you need to abuse this mobility. Then all of a sudden you can't be doing that sort of thing with these siege tanks. Blue cannot be waltzing all the way forward. So right now, I would say that blue is at a very clear advantage positionally. I have not looked at the food counts. Let's glance at that. Alright, you know what? So red has fewer dudes. That's fine. But now blue has an advantage because his immobile army, his strong army that was immobile, another way to say immobile, the weakness of blue's army is that it would not be able to get to here because it is hard to be mobile and to get where you want with this slow, strong army. But now that he does have that, he has a strong army exactly where he wants, and it's going to be a little bit tougher to do much of anything. So, how does red exploit that? Well, he was exploiting the immobility before. He's going to continue to exploit the immobility right now. Stimming, dropping, trying to hit him where he's weak. Fantastic, fantastic. Doing all that sorts of good stuff while my nose continues to run like a leaky faucet. Yep, doing all sorts of good jazz, and now, suddenly, we've seen red go from a style that was pretty typical, using tanks and Vikings to push aggressively, into something that reminds me a lot of the Peruvian player Phoenix, where Phoenix makes lots of tanks for defense and rallies all his stuff here, and then runs medevacs and small forces all around every which way. Alright, cool. We're continuing to see why tanks are awesome, because if we get this sort of position set up, we can end up taking this. Now, let's think about exactly what blue's doing. Why would he be unsieging here? Well, he's obviously gearing up to make a little bit of a push. Nothing wrong with pulling back a little to regroup, because if you are immobile and you expand it around a ton, you've got to be pretty careful. Got to be pretty careful. So again, using little teensy bits of mobility, trying to squeak his way forward. This is what's very fun about this tank style on this map, and just in general, using a lot of medic marine. Doing a lot of good old counterattacking. I'm quite excited to see the deviations that they end up doing. Alright, speeding it up a little bit, speeding it up a little bit. Okay, so, alright. Now, let's pretend that we had no idea what happened beforehand. We had no idea what happened beforehand. What would you say about this unit mix from this Terran player? What would you say about it? What would you say about it, right? For a long time, I was calling the blue player the immobile player. For a very long time, I was calling him that. But right now, does he look immobile? Does he have that immobile feel to him? Well, if we look objectively, he has a lot of Vikings. Vikings are what let your tanks begin moving forward. They give you that vision advantage. So this player suddenly has to play a little bit more defensively. This player can play a little bit more aggressively. Because again, he has these Vikings out right now. This is really good. Again, we saw red push with tanks and Vikings earlier, so it's very reasonable that we're seeing blue push with tanks and Vikings earlier. All we got to be careful about right now as red is that we make sure that we don't let this push continue to move forward aggressively. Right? We can occasionally take little pokes at it like this, but those tend not to go well. And uh-oh, we're losing many Omedivacks, but this is a time when drops become increasingly important as a Terran player. When you have, like, your tank line can't move forward, the strong, immobile part really is very much so immobile, so you just need to just begin doing these sorts of counterattacks because this is where the clump of his army is going to be. Alright, tank's line is being sieged up. This really time you're going you super the reason that safe is if your opponent was doing a lot of air stuff, banshees, drops, that sort of thing, and please. Alright, so make sure you watch your minimap a lot, and this is a terrible time for a Terran player, is when he has to do something like this. This is exactly what not be making right now. He got the losing end of this by a significant. In particular, it's kind of funny because blue is actually allowed to do this. He's allowed to completely sack all that great positioning and just reconsolidate an army because you know he has a gold base, his opponent doesn't. Again, we see tanks and Vikings. Makes sense to begin getting some Vikings. We want to start trying to eat away at those tank lines, and Vikings let our tanks be aggressive. Or we could continue to do the medevac drop stuff. We could circumvent this huge push in the middle and be using our tanks defensively. But just make sure that you stay consistent. Don't get a whole bunch of medevacs and a whole bunch of infantry and then try to push with your tanks. Don't get a whole bunch of Vikings with your tanks and then get ready to play really passively. Get Vikings with tanks to be aggressive, get medevacs with tanks if you also want to be sort of counter-aggressive, and not use your tanks in the spread. So now we see it looks like Terran gearing up to take out another expansion. More little Viking battles going on. Blue making himself a bit of a blunder. This is the sort of thing that's, it's alright. Always have to be most careful about the front of your base. Phoenix is, again, very good at positioning these tanks in a good way and getting the most of his angles so we can continue to do this sort of stuff. This is the really good stuff. Again, on this map, why do we say we like tanks so much? They can control a lot of bases at once just by being in a location. This isn't really close to much of any commit. To attacking these sorts of tank lines. I would label red as the overall victor of that fight. But sometimes it's a good idea just to begin picking off little locations like that. And actually what we're starting to see all of a sudden is a total collapse by blue. Something happened with his position that really mucked up everything. We might have to retake a look at that. Around the 21-minute mark, things went a little bit awry. I'm actually going to speed this up a touch. I mean, they've been making the same mix of units. I haven't even gone back to a base to be like, how's macro doing? How's upgrade doing? You know, I haven't really done that. Just sort of assume that they're doing the right thing. Man, blue's a macro hero. Look at all that stuff producing. Wow, and where's red? He just has like 6 unit producing structures. I haven't really looked back in the bases until right then because all of this is a lot about positioning and when you consider engaging. We definitely need to re-look at that moment because you'll just notice the key shift just by looking at the mini-map of one player suddenly not really being aggressive and the aggressive player just suddenly crushing everything. Now this sort of stuff can be very good. The sort of like, hey, I got my tanks here, but always remember, if your opponent plants a bunch of tanks and counterattacks your weakened main, you can be in a very rough spot. Counterattacking around tanks is a significant concern in this matchup. Too often I see players just like straight up, just like, oh, let's wail on each other. Well, if your tanks shut down infantry so hard, and all his tanks are here, and all your tanks are here, well, why don't you just go counterattack his base? Likewise, again, we're seeing blue. Same little pattern here. The instant that I am having to play a little bit more defensively, and I'm kind of low on the Viking count, and I don't really want to be pushing with my tanks, these sorts of drops are very, very, very good. The farther your opponent gets into your territory, the better this sort of thing becomes. And of course, little drops like that are an excellent way to exploit mistakes. Pulling back, pulling back. I'm still really feeling like that one moment where blue suddenly just lost a whole bunch of stuff here. That seems pretty darn key, so I definitely want to rewatch that. Tanks, very effective at showing tanks. Blue figures out a way to lose a Viking despite being in an even situation. I'm a little surprised that red hasn't been expanding a lot more in this particular circumstance. Alright, more typical stuff, more tanks, more infantry from blue, and less Vikings, just building lots and lots of stuff. Standard, 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 dancing, dancing, dancing. I'm still thinking, yeah, that 21-minute mark, weird twist around, really seemed like the final nail in the coffin. Yeah, and it looks like, okay, now this sort of attack is okay. This is what blue was trying to do earlier. Pick off a bunch of tanks, ideally the majority of his opponent's army, to get in a position like this. Notice that blue has not, like, it's not like he killed off an army and now he just, like, sprinted to the main and won. He killed off a bunch of tanks, put his tanks in a good position, and just sieged them. And now he's gonna slowly begin the boa constrictor action. Pretty typical. I'm still somewhat blown away that blue managed to do this, but again, if you have 5-unit producing structures all game long, that can be a little bit of an issue. There it dies, there's the scan. Boring, boring, boring. Standard, standard. Alright, cool, we have them contained. We'll use our mobile units to scour around the map, because again, if these are holding our main position, we don't really need a lot of medic and marine here. Yep, cleaned up, cool. This game's going to be over real soon. Let's actually look at how much longer the game is. Alright, cool. It looks like blue is on the verge of winning. If red somehow won, my mind would be blown. But really, in almost every game, there's like a key point where the tides turn. So it looks like, you know, we're seeing, even in the food count, things look pretty even. Blue's taking the advantage of his strong, immobile tank force in a great spot, so that way he can expand a bunch. There's Planetary Fortress coming down. Red now stemming forward, trying to charge. Oh, wow, yep, red not in a good spot. And also he just lost those medevacs here, if you recall. There's the stim up, okay. Yep, you know, blue is way, way ahead. Where's that key moment where blue almost lost? If red had won this game, this would be like the key defining moment of the game, but it's still a key moment. So, alright, cool. Let's look at this position objectively. Almost always, whenever you have a little force like this, alright, here's a big army. If you scan a small army that you can easily kill, in particular an unsieged army, then go kill it, right? I mean, this happens in every matchup. If I have 12 speed zerglings and I see 3 marauders just wandering off doing their own thing, I'm going to take my 12 speed zerglings and go kill those 3 marauders. Why would I not do that? But, yes, okay, that's very good and obvious and well. However, with siege tanks, you want to be a little bit careful. Anytime you see an outlying force like this that's smaller, great. See if you can kill it, but never forget the advantage of scanning right here. Scan their main a little bit, and we see that blue is kind of thinking to himself, uh-oh, looks like I can't quite break this front area. Now, I'm going to state something that's probably going to blow a lot of people's minds, but in StarCraft, a lot of times your goal is not to be efficient. That is not always the goal. People like to do, oh, it's more efficient unit, the DPS is higher per cost average. Sometimes it's just not the goal. I mean, for instance, like, have you ever seen a Zerg get maxed on roaches? Like, just roaches, no broodlords, no nothing, and they sit and they macro, and they just sit, they're max, building up larvae, building up money. And then what do? They attack, rally all their hatches, and then they just bring out a ton more roaches. Right? That is not efficient. It is not efficient to only make roaches against a unit mix and say, but I'm going to have 300 food worth of them at the end of the day, so it's fine. That is not efficient. But it's still good. It's still a commonly used tactic that all Zerg players deploy in almost all matchups, right? It's not so much about efficiency. So for instance, let me point this out. Let's say there is an expo up here. Let's say red has this expansion, and this expansion, and this expansion. And we see that there's some units here, right? We see that there's all of red's units defending our top right expansions as red. And red also has some units here defending his main. It is great to take a smaller army, or excuse me, to take a huge army and inefficiently throw it at a key control point in order to get some sort of advantage. Because right now, again, pretend that we have this base. Pretend that we have this base. Pretend red has both of these. What does this Terran do? Well, he's going to siege these 5 tanks up here. He's probably going to take this set of tanks and move here and siege them. And then just slowly funnel Marines up to kill this one, and then slowly funnel some more up to kill this one, right? He threw a bigger army at a better positioned, smaller army. We clearly see that blue took a loss. All right, this again is the really keyest moment in the entire game. All right, here he's going to come, here he's going to come. All right, look at that, 170 versus 145, and then suddenly we are even. All right, great. Now, let's see how blue makes use of this position, though. This is what is very uncomfortable about this spot. There's nothing really here to take out and nothing really here to take out. There was no real need to suicide to kill this off. We could have easily just, you know, sieged some tanks here and denied this expansion. And, you know, this Marine here is already spotting this one. And it's a little confusing to me that blue brings all his stuff back down to the right side, because the center is so freaking important. Like, look at this. Just completely sacrificed control of the middle. He moved up here to take out a force. That's kind of fine. But then, all these tanks just wandered to the backside. So they obviously cannot wander more in this way. Like, if blue sieges all his tanks up here, red swings down like that. So blue is forced to do this massive retreat. And interestingly, you always just kind of want to label the key points on the map. I'll label the big one for you, the middle. That is the most important spot on the map. Anytime you do some sort of battle, you should probably be thinking, how the hell do I get back to the middle? Alright, cool, what, did I take an expansion over here? Alright, can I hold the middle? I mean, red doesn't even really need the middle. But look at blue. Where's blue going to go? Well, he can't really go out this way, and if he tries to move around this way too much, red can just drill directly into his main. None of this would have happened if blue had just had a little bit better control over these situations. And now suddenly, he's in an awkward spot. Now, for the record, again, don't become obsessed about where his tanks are. I honestly think that blue might just be thinking in his mind, oh, there's an army, better go kill it. That's why he killed that one. And, oh, here's an army at my front door, better go kill that. Nothing wrong with planting tanks. Like, planting some tanks right here. Just like 6 tanks, 7 tanks. Taking 3 tanks, then taking all these Marines, these tanks, these medevacs full of guys, and killing this. Killing this. What the hell are these tanks going to do about it? Tanks are great if they get attacked. So it's great to not attack tanks and to attack where the tanks are not. Then we see some more swinginess, and the game eventually, no, do not load that up. Eventually the game just turns into blue winning because he has more unit producing structures. But you can be cool like blue and not end up in a long game like blue if you just do very good positioning, very smart positioning with those tanks and with counterattacking. For any of you who want to see more of this and you're a Terran player, get lots of Phoenix's replays. Again, F-E-N-I-X. He is a master at that. A freaking master at this, positioning tanks, attacking where his tanks are not. Oops, did he make a mistake? I'm going to punish it with my Marine Marauder. He's one of the few Terran players I've played against where his 3 barracks of Marine Marauder feels like 10 barracks of Marine Marauder because he's so good at hitting you where you're weak. So with that, we're going to take some questions, and then I'm going to take a 30-minute break to let my voice rest because, again, I don't really know exactly what exactly what's going on with my diseasedness, but yeah. So yeah, I'm going to take a break, and then I'm going to be doing the Root Gaming Tournament, Sen vs. Torrent. And for any of you archive viewers, it should be up on the archives. Oh, there was a delay with Fun Day Monday yesterday. Don't worry about that. It's up there right now. So Blip TV, or day9tv.blip.tv is my archives, or youtube.com/day9tv for the slightly delayed but HD archives. RDJ107 says, Dear Day 9, is there such a thing as the most efficient tank line? Is there any difference between a giant line of tanks and keeping them in a single blob? You'll generally find that lined tanks and individually controlled tanks are a lot better than blobs of tanks, because blobs of tanks naturally will have like this one tank on the outskirt and that one tank on the other outskirt. So, you know, if you have a blob, another Terran player who makes a cup like this will have all these 6 tanks firing at this one little tank of yours. So it'll just, you know, you'll slowly get chewed in from the edges. So you always want to make sure that you don't have outlying tanks. So that's me blowing my nose, folks. Let's see here. Let's see. So MBR2321 says, Dear Almighty Thoughthammer, there were several moments in this game when one player would unsiege his tanks and bum rush the siege tanks of the opponent. How do you know when to do this? This is the way I would answer the question. That a lot of people would answer it as, well, you scan, and if you can kill it, you should kill it. Not quite. That's close. That's like almost close. But the problem with that is that's like saying I'm going to sacrifice 100 units to kill 60 units because I can. There needs to be one more step. There needs to be one more after justification. So if you have 100 food worth of unsieged tanks taking on 60 food worth of tanks and you barely win, that's fine as long as the position that you got in the end was good. In Terran vs. Terran, this is especially true because you're basically thinking something like the following. Oh, damn, I closed it. Okay. So let's say in the center there were 7 siege tanks, and you had 20 Marines and 8 siege tanks, right? That should be pretty close. So you run up, you start losing a lot of stuff, your tanks do shots. You can say to yourself, it's okay that I am losing all these forces because I'm going to get the center of the map, which means I can get this expansion up easily. Yeah! Or you can say something like, it's okay that I sack a lot of units to break this line of tanks because then I'm going to kill his 2 expansions later on. Yeah! Again, in the attack, I'm inefficient. In the attack, I'm losing more than he is. But I'm breaking it. I'm getting that key position that allows me to do blah. So make sure you know what blah is. I'm going to take one more question, then I'm actually going to take a break. Sorry, my throat's hurting. Let's see here. Someone asking, do I do cocaine? Only when I don't have strat. Totally. I actually order it from Starbucks. I get the cocaine macchiato. It's one of my favorites. So let's see. Let's take this question from Zovik, who says, Dear Day 9, during the first push, Blue won a decisive battle, and clearly could have continued to push in. It would have prevented him being on the back foot around the 21-minute mark. I don't quite know what that means. Might take another question. What does that question mean? I will briefly answer it, and then I'll actually take another one, because I don't quite know what the question is. A lot of times there are spots where it kind of seems like you can push in, but in Terran vs. Terran, it's often better to just hold the position, hold your ground, and then just continue expanding. It's almost like in a Zerg vs. Terran or a Zerg vs. Protoss. Terran comes out with his first push, or Protoss comes out with his first push. Zerg overruns it and kills it. And maybe half the time, Zerg could take everything he has and go kill the opponent. But you know what's always okay to do is for Zerg to take 2 more bases, with the opponent being able to do nothing about that. Alright, I will take one more question. Emoke says, Dear Day 9, tanks are such a good defending unit. Shouldn't the Terran players be taking more expos? Sure. It's one of the main reasons I really like the idea of getting a lot of tanks on this map. But you just have to make sure you're doing something a little bit extra. Either taking it, so one of 3 things. Taking expansions so quickly Actually, no, there's two things. If you are playing defensively with your tanks, that is, you're not going like Viking tank and trying to push him, you should either be taking expansion so fast that your opponent's mind is blown and you have so many tanks he can't quite break it. Because again, you're basically saying, dear opponent, you get to do whatever you want. I'm just making tanks and expanding. So you have to make sure that expansion rate is fast enough to make that passivity okay. Or you need to be something like making a lot of tanks, expanding rapidly, and doing a lot of counter-harassment with banshees, with drops, that sort of thing. Those are really the two ways that you want to be playing. If you're kind of expanding some and you're thinking, oh, I'm going to play defensive, you will get mauled by a player who's good at abusing your immobility, and he'll just actually out-expand you. So with that, I'm wrapping up this daily. That has been Day 9 Daily number 238. A random TvT between two players. I don't know, but still we got to see some cool plays, some cool mistakes that you can steal too. Once again, for Newbie Tuesday next week, rewatch a game of you Zerg players, please, doing the strategy from Day 9 Daily 235 and telling me what you think and what your struggles and victories were like. And then for Fun Day Monday, please send a replay to Monday at day9.tv of you only attacking with units that were built off warp prisms. Any units that were built off regular pylons cannot attack until you have 3 bases. In other words, in the early parts of the game, you must be doing lots of warp prism harassment. You cannot be doing a lot of direct attacking. Only after you have a big economy can you be doing direct attacking. So I'll say it one more time. You may only attack with units made off pylons after you have 3 bases. Before then, you can only attack with units that come from a warp prism, such as units warped in under the warp prism or immortal drops. You cannot walk to their base and attack. That wraps up the daily. I'll see you in 30 minutes with the first semifinal of the Root Gaming Warzone tournament, Torrent versus Sake. No, Torrent versus Sen.